My name is Lily, and I've always been the forgotten one, the afterthought, the kid who came way too late to the party. My eldest sister, Olivia, is 12 years older than me, and Chloe, the middle one, has a 10-year head start. By the time I could form full sentences, they were already knee-deep in high school drama, dates, and college applications. Growing up in our suburban Wisconsin home, I learned pretty quickly that I wasn't exactly the star of the show. Dad and Mom were obsessed with Olivia's straight A's and Chloe's cheerleading trophies. Every family dinner was a highlight reel of their achievements. Olivia just got accepted into Stanford. Mom would announce, beaming. Chloe made captain of the cheer squad, Dad would add. And me? I'd be sitting there, pushing vegetables around my plate, completely invisible. I remember the day. Olivia brought home her first boyfriend. I was 5, peeking through the stair railing, watching as this tall, nervous guy shook hands with Dad. A year later, Chloe was bringing home her own dates, and suddenly, our house was filled with talk of prom dresses, SAT scores, and future careers. Meanwhile, my only mention was a casual, Lily, have you finished your homework? An afterthought at best. I got used to being on my own. I had no one to really bond with, no older sibling willing to spend time with their much younger sister. So I taught myself to be independent. I read books, explored the neighborhood alone, and stopped expecting attention that would never come. Then Olivia had her first child, and suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was useful. She brought baby James home when I was 15, and my parents lost their minds with excitement. Our first grandbaby, they gushed, doting on Olivia like she was royalty. You'll be the best aunt, Lily, Mom said, squeezing my shoulder. At the time, I smiled, thinking it would be fun to have a baby in the family. I had no idea what was coming. It started small. Lily, can you hold James while I run to the store? Olivia asked one afternoon. Before I could even answer, she was gone, leaving me staring at a drooling infant in my arms. Then it became a pattern. Every weekend, Olivia would drop James off at our house and vanish for hours. Just a little break, she'd say, already halfway out the door. It wasn't long before Chloe followed suit. At 16, I found myself juggling a toddler and a newborn, Chloe's daughter, Sophie. My weekends, once meant for studying or hanging out with friends, turned into endless cycles of diaper changes, tantrums, and lullabies. One Saturday, I finally worked up the courage to say something. Mom, I had plans today. I was supposed to meet Mia at the mall, I protested, rocking a fussy Sophie while James dumped his toys all over the living room. Mom barely looked up from her magazine. Family helps family, Lily. You'll understand when you have kids. I wanted to scream. I wasn't a mother. I was a teenager, but no one seemed to care. I stopped arguing. Instead, I threw myself into school, studying late into the night so I could get the best grades possible. If I had any hope of escaping this unpaid babysitting nightmare, I needed a way out. My golden ticket came in the form of an acceptance letter from UCLA, complete with a partial scholarship. I could finally breathe. Except, my family had other plans. The university in town has a great program, Olivia suggested during what they called a family discussion, but felt more like an ambush. You could live at home and save money, Chloe added. Plus, it would be great to have you around for the kids. I nearly choked on my drink. This wasn't about me. It was about keeping their free babysitter. Just as I was about to argue, my grandmother, silent until now, spoke up. Lily belongs at UCLA. The room went silent. Grandma Rose looked at my parents, then my sisters. She's worked hard for this, and the scholarship is a blessing. Plus, your father and I put money aside for our grandkids' education. She's going. I had never loved my grandma more than at that moment. My parents looked disappointed. Olivia and Chloe exchanged annoyed glances. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. And I wasn't going to stop there. College was everything I had dreamed of: freedom, peace, and best of all, no crying kids demanding my attention. My dorm room was small, but it was mine. My weekends? Spent however I wanted. I made real friends. Ones who didn't see me as a free babysitter but as an actual person. But, of course, I couldn't escape family obligations forever. Thanksgiving was unavoidable. I went home, endured the chaos, nodded along to stories about James and Sophie as if I had any real interest, and left as soon as I could. But Christmas? That was a different beast. Mom called me 2 weeks in advance. Everyone's asking about you, sweetie. The kids miss you so much. Translation, we need our babysitter back. I sighed, gripping my phone. I don't know, Mom. I have a lot of studying to. Oh, don't be silly. You can study here. Besides, it's tradition. We always spend Christmas together. Tradition? Since when was me being an unpaid nanny a tradition? But arguing with her was like arguing with a brick wall. So, I caved. I packed my bags and made the drive back home, mentally preparing for what I assumed would be another year of being shoved into the role of Aunt Lily, the 24/7 childcare service. I had no idea how bad it would be. The moment I stepped inside, I was hit with pure chaos. James, now 4, was running circles around the living room, nearly knocking over the Christmas tree. Sophie, 2.5, was crying about something unintelligible. And to top it all off, Olivia and Chloe had managed to multiply. Olivia now had 2 kids, James and his baby brother, Caleb. And Chloe? She had added a toddler named Mason to her family. Oh, and they weren't the only ones. Lily! Aunt Trish called, steering her twin 5-year-olds in my direction. They've been asking about you. No, they hadn't. They barely knew who I was. Before I could react, Cousin Danielle's daughter clung to my leg like a koala, and Cousin Matt's 3 kids came barreling through the hallway, screeching like banshees. 12 kids. 12. I barely had time to process it before Mom appeared, a plate of cookies in her hands. Lily, sweetheart, why don't you take the kids upstairs? I'll bring snacks later. And just like that, I was back in my old bedroom now, a war zone of spilled juice, crayon-streaked walls, and an army of sugar-high children bouncing off the furniture. The adults? Enjoying their peaceful Christmas dinner downstairs. I stared at the clock. It had been 6 hours. Not one of them had checked on me. Not one had asked if I had eaten. By the time I managed to wrangle all the kids back to their respective parents, the dining table was nearly empty. Plates had been scraped clean, the good food devoured, and all that remained were dirty dishes and picked-over leftovers. Ugh, Lily, Olivia cooed, stuffing her baby into his car seat. Caleb was such an angel for you, wasn't he? She didn't wait for an answer. Chloe was already zipping up Mason's coat. We've got to run, it's past bedtime. Aunt Trish was strapping in her twins. Danielle was carrying her sleeping daughter to the car. Not a single thank you. Not a single. Hey, Lily, did you get to eat? They just left. I stood there in the wreckage of Christmas dinner, stomach growling, exhaustion pressing down on me. Then Mom's voice floated in from the kitchen. Lily, be a dear and help me with the dishes, will you? That was the moment something inside me snapped. I stared at the pile of dirty plates, at the evidence of a meal I never got to enjoy, and I realized something. This wasn't normal. This wasn't family helping family. This was exploitation. And I was done. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day in my head. 12 kids. 12 screaming, crying, sticky-handed little monsters. And not one of the adults had lifted a finger to help me. Not one. I'd spent the entire day running after their kids while they sat downstairs, eating, laughing, and relaxing. Meanwhile, I was stuck upstairs, breaking up fights, changing diapers, and wiping up juice spills. And the worst part? They didn't even acknowledge it. They just packed up their kids, said their goodbyes, and left. Like I was the help. Like I wasn't even family, just a convenient, unpaid babysitter. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was done. Lying there, I made a decision. This was the last time. I wasn't going to be tricked into another Christmas like this. I wasn't going to be guilt-tripped into sacrificing my time while everyone else got to enjoy themselves. Next year, I would not be coming home, and if they didn't like it, too bad. Finals week rolled around, and just as I expected, the dreaded text from Mom came. Mom, Sarah and Chloe are coming with the kids for Christmas. And guess what? Aunt Trish is bringing her twins, plus Danielle's little one, and even Lisa's kids are joining. It'll be so wonderful to have all the little ones together. I did the math. 12 kids. They were planning to dump 12 kids on me again. I stared at my phone, waiting for the usual follow-up message. The one where mom would casually tell me to help out because family sticks together. But it never came. Because this time, she knew she didn't need to say it. She expected me to show up. She expected me to do what I always did: smile, say nothing, and sacrifice my entire holiday for the sake of everyone else's comfort. But this year was different. I texted back, I'm not coming home this year. I have plans. Her reply was almost immediate. Mom, plans? But it's Christmas, sweetheart. The kids have been asking about you. They'll be fine without me. Enjoy your holiday. I hit send, heart pounding, and waited. Seconds later, my phone started ringing. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Then came the texts, first from Mom, then Olivia, then Chloe. Mom, Lily, don't be ridiculous. It's family. Olivia, what's your problem? It's just a couple of days. Chloe, wow, so selfish. Guess you don't care about your nieces and nephews, huh? I put my phone on silent and tossed it onto my desk. Let them be mad. Let them figure out how to watch their own kids this year. For the first time ever, Christmas was going to be my holiday. And I wasn't going to waste a second of it. I spent Christmas with my roommate, Kate, at her family's cabin in the mountains. It was everything my holidays had never been: relaxing, peaceful, and full of actual joy. We played board games, watched cheesy Christmas movies, and ate a home-cooked meal that I actually got to enjoy hot. No screaming kids, no being shoved into the role of babysitter. Just me, surrounded by people who actually wanted me there, not because they needed free labor, but because they genuinely enjoyed my company. And it hit me, this was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. I had spent years dreading the holidays because my family had turned them into something exhausting, something draining. But it didn't have to be that way. I could choose myself, and I finally had. Of course, my family didn't take it well. When I got back to campus, I saw the missed calls, the unread messages, the angry texts from my sisters. Olivia was furious. Chloe was even worse. Olivia, I can't believe you abandoned us on Christmas. Do you know how hard it was with all those kids? Chloe, we really needed you, and you just disappeared. So immature, Lily. I didn't reply. They needed to sit in their own mess and figure it out themselves. Mom, on the other hand, took a different approach. Mom, sweetheart, I just don't understand. You've never had a problem helping before. I sighed. I had always had a problem with it. They had just never listened. So I sent one final message. I never agreed to be the family babysitter. You all just decided I would be. And I'm done. From now on, I'll only be part of family gatherings if I'm treated like family, not free childcare. Then, for the first time in my life, I blocked my mom, and it felt incredible. Blocking my mom should have been the end of it, a clean break, a fresh start. But of course, my family wasn't going to let me go that easily. At first, it was just silence. No texts, no calls, no guilt-tripping messages disguised as "we miss you, please." For a week, I thought I had finally won. Then, the real backlash started. It began with Olivia. One afternoon, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. Unknown, wow, Lily, really mature. I rolled my eyes. New number, who dis? Unknown, don't be an ass. It's Olivia. Of course it was. Olivia, do you have any idea how hard Christmas was without you? The kids were insane. Chloe and I didn't even get to enjoy dinner because we were too busy running around like crazy. I smirked. Oh, you mean like how I've spent every Christmas for the past 6 years? Silence. Then Olivia. It's different. Different. How? Because it wasn't them getting the short end of the stick? Because for once they had to actually parent their own kids? I didn't bother replying. I had better things to do than entertain her pity party. A few days later, Chloe tried her turn. Chloe, you really hurt Mom, you know. She cried on Christmas because of you. Ah, there it was. The classic you hurt Mom guilt trip. The last desperate attempt to make me feel like the villain. But I didn't bite. Mom cried because she had to actually spend Christmas with her grandchildren instead of shoving them onto me? That's not my problem. Again, no response. They could throw tantrums all they wanted. I wasn't going back. Then came the unexpected visitor. One evening in late January, I was in my dorm, curled up with a blanket and a bag of popcorn, binge watching Netflix after a long day of classes. Then knock knock. I groaned, dragging myself to the door. Probably Kate forgetting her key again, but when I opened it, I nearly dropped my popcorn. Mom, standing there in the hallway wrapped in her heavy winter coat, looking at me like I was a child who had run away from home. I blinked. What are you doing here? She sighed, stepping forward like she expected me to invite her in. Can we talk? I hesitated, then finally moved aside, letting her into my tiny dorm room. She sat down on the edge of my bed, clasping her hands together. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she finally said, Lily, why are you doing this? I scoffed. Seriously? She looked up, her eyes tired. You've always helped before. I just don't understand why this year was different. I let out a humorless laugh. Because I'm done, Mom? I've been done. You just never noticed. She frowned. But you never said, I did say. My voice sharpened. I've been saying it for years. You just never listened. She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Every Christmas, every holiday, you all just expected me to be the babysitter. No one ever asked me. No one ever thought about how I felt. It was just Lily will handle it while you all got to relax and enjoy yourselves. And when I finally put my foot down, you acted like I was the one ruining Christmas. Her lips pressed together. It wasn't like that, wasn't it? I raised an eyebrow. Tell me, Mom, when was the last time I got to sit at the table with you all and actually eat Christmas dinner? When was the last time I got to enjoy a holiday without being shoved into a room with screaming kids while you all had fun downstairs? She didn't answer, because she knew. For the first time, I saw it. The realization sinking in, the guilt. Good, Mom exhaled, rubbing her temples. I thought you loved spending time with the kids. I sighed. I love them, Mom. But loving them doesn't mean I have to sacrifice myself for them. I'm their aunt, not their second mom. She nodded slowly, absorbing my words. Then, in a small voice, she said, I miss you, sweetheart. That part I believed. For all her flaws, I knew my mom loved me. She just never saw me as anything more than the helper, the easygoing youngest daughter who never caused problems. Until now, I softened. I miss you too, Mom, but things have to change. She looked up. What do you mean? I folded my arms. If I come home for holidays, I'm coming as family, not as free childcare. That means no babysitting unless I choose to. No more dumping the kids on me. And if Olivia and Chloe don't like it, that's their problem, not mine. She hesitated, then finally nodded. Okay. For the first time, it felt like she actually heard me. And maybe things would be different. After Mom left my dorm that night, I sat in silence for a long time, just processing everything. For the first time, she had actually listened. It didn't erase years of being treated like free labor. It didn't fix all the resentment I still carried, but it was a start. Still, words were easy. I'd heard plenty of those before. The real question was, would anything actually change? I wasn't holding my breath. Spring semester flew by in a blur of classes, exams, and late-night hangouts with my friends. By the time summer break rolled around, I'd settled into my new normal one where I had zero obligations to my family outside of the occasional check-in with Mom. And honestly, it was amazing. I spent my summer working a part-time job, saving up money, and enjoying my freedom. No babysitting. No being guilt-tripped into watching someone else's kids. No dealing with Olivia and Chloe's never-ending entitlement. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control. Then, August rolled around, and the next big test came Mom's birthday. She wanted me to come home for the weekend, and after everything that had happened, I agreed. I wasn't doing it out of obligation. I was doing it for me, to see if anything had actually changed. I arrived late Friday evening, stepping into the familiar scent of home vanilla candles, baked goods, and a faint hint of Dad's aftershave. Mom greeted me with a hug, and for the first time, I didn't feel like she was holding on to me for dear life, trying to guilt me into staying forever. Dinner was normal, pleasant even. No weird tension. No "so, when are you moving back?" comments. For once, I felt like an actual guest in my own family home. And then, Saturday afternoon happened. I was in the kitchen, helping Mom with the final touches on her birthday cake when I heard them, Olivia and Chloe. They strolled in like they owned the place, their kids trailing behind them in a stampede of noise. I braced myself. Sure enough, within minutes, Olivia turned to me with that same expectant look she always had. "Hey, Lily," she said sweetly. "Can you watch the kids for a bit? I want to catch up with Mom." Here we go again. I wiped my hands on a towel and gave her the calmest, most neutral look I could muster. No. The room went silent. Chloe blinked. "Wait, what?" I crossed my arms. I said no. I'm not babysitting. I came here to celebrate Mom's birthday, not to be dumped with your kids. Olivia's jaw tightened. "It's not a big deal, Lily. You love spending time with them." "That's not the point." I exhaled sharply, keeping my voice even. "The point is, you two don't even ask, you just expect it." "And I'm done with that," Chloe scoffed. "Oh my God, you're still on this?" She threw her hands up. "It's family, Lily. We all help each other out." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? Then why don't you ever help me?" Silence. I let that sit for a moment before continuing. "Because as far as I can tell, family helps family only applies when you need something. But the second I have boundaries, I'm selfish." Mom cleared her throat, stepping in before they could argue. "Girls, let's not do this today." But Olivia wasn't backing down. "Unbelievable," she muttered, shaking her head. "You go off to college for a few months, and suddenly, you think you're too good for us?" My blood boiled. I expected guilt tripping, but this was next level delusion. I let out a short laugh. "Too good for you? No, Olivia. I just finally realized my worth. Big difference." Chloe scoffed, grabbing her purse. "Whatever. Let's go, Olivia." And just like that, they left kids in tow, still fuming. I half expected Mom to scold me, but she just sighed, shaking her head. "They'll come around." I wasn't so sure. But for the first time, I didn't care. The next few months were quiet. Olivia and Chloe stopped texting me completely. No fake check-ins. No guilt-tripping messages. At first, it was weird. Then it was peaceful. Mom still called me every week, and every now and then, Dad would check in too. But it was clear that Olivia and Chloe were giving me the cold shoulder. And honestly, it was the best thing they'd ever done for me. Then December rolled around. And with it, the ultimate test Christmas. Mom called me in early December, her voice hesitant. "Sweetheart, I know last year was rough, but I wanted to ask, do you want to come home for Christmas?" "Not you have to. Not it's tradition. Do you want to?" I smiled. "Progress. I'll think about it," I said honestly. And I did. For the first time, I actually considered it. Not because I felt obligated, but because it was my choice. I ended up deciding to go home, but with conditions. Before I even packed my bags, I made it clear to Mom I was coming as a guest, not a babysitter. I would not be watching anyone's kids unless I chose to. If Olivia and Chloe tried anything, I would leave. Mom agreed. And so, for the first time in years, I walked into my childhood home on Christmas Eve without a knot in my stomach. The house was decorated just like always. The smell of Mom's famous apple pie filled the air. The Christmas tree twinkled in the corner, ornaments carefully placed in their usual spots. It felt the same, but I was different. When Olivia and Chloe arrived, they barely acknowledged me. Fine by me. At dinner, the conversation was stilted, tension hanging in the air. But I didn't let it get to me. I sat at the table, ate my meal hot, and actually enjoyed Christmas dinner for the first time in forever. At one point, Olivia started to say something, probably another passive-aggressive comment, but Mom shut it down. "Let's just have a nice Christmas," she said firmly. And that was that. No more babysitting, no more being taken for granted, just me, finally treated like an equal. And for the first time, Christmas actually felt like Christmas. That Christmas was the first one I'd actually enjoyed in years. No running up and down the stairs chasing after toddlers. No being shoved into my old bedroom with a bunch of kids while the adults relaxed downstairs. For the first time, I was just part of the family, not the free help. And you know what? The world didn't end. James and Caleb survived without me constantly entertaining them. Sophie and Mason were perfectly fine with their actual parents watching them. Shocking, right? But Olivia and Chloe, they were pissed. They didn't throw a fit at the dinner table, but their icy silence said enough. They barely looked at me all night, only speaking when absolutely necessary. At one point, Olivia muttered under her breath, "Must be nice, doing nothing while everyone else actually has responsibilities." I almost laughed. Doing nothing? Oh no, I was doing something. I was watching them deal with their own kids for once. And it was glorious. After dinner, everyone moved to the living room. Christmas music played softly, and Mom passed out slices of her famous apple pie. I sat on the couch, warm plate in hand, savoring every single bite. Meanwhile, across the room, Olivia was desperately trying to calm a fussy Caleb while James ran around, hyped up on sugar. Chloe was trying and failing to get Mason to settle down, and Sophie had spilled juice all over her dress. It was chaos. But this time, not my problem. I leaned back, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, peace. They could glare at me all they wanted. Let them struggle. Let them finally experience the exhaustion I'd endured every single holiday. Maybe now they'd finally get it. The next morning, as I was getting ready to leave, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," she said, squeezing my hand. I blinked. "For what?" "For standing up for yourself," she said softly. "For not letting them push you around anymore." For a second, I didn't know what to say. Mom had always been the one excusing Olivia and Chloe's behavior, always telling me that's just how family is. But now she saw it. I nodded. "Thanks, Mom." She gave me a small smile. "Are you coming back next year?" I thought about it for a moment. Would Olivia and Chloe ever change? Probably not. But that wasn't my problem anymore, because now I had boundaries. I wasn't afraid to say no. I wasn't afraid to walk away if I wasn't being respected. So I shrugged. We'll see. And for the first time, I knew that decision was mine to make. A few weeks later, back at college, I got a text from Chloe. "Chloe, so I guess you're never babysitting again, huh?" I smirked, then typed back, "Me, you guess right." She left me on read. I tossed my phone onto my bed, stretched out, and smiled. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. And damn, did it feel good. Story 2. Without consulting me, my parents gave my sister free use of my investment property. Mom claimed she was having trouble. Not like you, after not paying rent for 6 months. They eventually realized why I wasn't concerned after seeing a letter from the bank. "She requires a new beginning. You must understand, Emma." The phone crackled with my mother's voice, a combination of begging and that familiar tone of guilt-tripping that I've come to know. As I tried to take in what she had just told me, I stood in my Manhattan office and gazed out at the skyline. It seems that without even asking me, my parents allowed my sister Jessica to reside in my investment home for free. Furthermore, he didn't consider asking me first. My hand grabbed the phone tighter, but I spoke steadily. "Mom, it's my property. I used my own funds to purchase it." "Yes, but following her divorce, Jessica is going through a really tough period. There is nowhere else for her to go, and your career in finance in New York is doing great. The property isn't even used by you." I closed my eyes and softly counted to 10. I put a lot of effort into developing my job as an investment banker at the age of 32, saving every cent to make real estate investments. My first significant investment property was a Chicago townhouse that my sister had reportedly moved into. I had meticulously restored it and was getting ready to rent it out at market value. "Besides, she's family," my mother said. "Family supports family. Family supports family." Those words were not very ironic. Me? When I was working 3 jobs and suffering through college while Jessica drank her way through her trust fund, where was this family-first mentality? For what duration has she been residing there? I feared the response as I asked. "Well, only a few days. Last weekend, she moved in. The spare key was given to her by your father. For emergencies, you departed with us." He did, of course. My jobless sister is now permanently installed in my investment property with the emergency key. I trusted them with. And when precisely were you intending to inform me? Now, honey, we're informing you. Jessica is delighted there as well. She has previously mentioned redecorating a few rooms to make them more light-filled. I felt sick to my stomach. "What is she?" "Oh, nothing significant. Only a few accent walls." "You are aware of her skill in interior design. Do you recall her desire to become a decorator?" I did recall. similar to how I recalled her stages as a yoga instructor, a photographer, and an organic juice bar. All costly endeavors that ultimately failed, all financed by our parents. She can't just mom. Please, Emma. My mom cut me off. Just help your sister once, please. She is a member of the family. I inhaled deeply once again, my mind already working out a strategy. She is family, Mom. You're correct. I knew you'd understand, my love. The reasonable one has always been you, I muttered as I accessed my financial information on my laptop. I must leave now, meeting with a client. I hung up and leaned back in my chair with a slight smile on my face. My family was unaware that, ever since Jessica's divorce, I had been planning for something similar for months. Her tendency of getting back on her feet through family bailouts is something I would observe. I had witnessed how my parents looked at my accomplishments, security, and possessions. I took out a big binder titled Chicago Property from my bottom desk drawer. I had prepared some emergency paperwork with my lawyer 6 months prior, and they were inside. Property rules, legal notifications, and above all, the documentation pertaining to the property's new status as a component of my company assets. The townhouse was no longer solely in my name, you see. My LLC now owned it, and there were stringent legal requirements for its usage and occupancy. According to corporate property regulations, any unapproved home might be deemed trespassing. I put it up this way especially to guard against crises in the family. Jessica texted me, and my phone buzzed. I appreciate you allowing me to crash at your house. Ito, you're the greatest big sister ever. Are you okay with me redesigning the kitchen cabinets? I didn't reply since the current ones are so outdated. Rather, I grabbed my office phone and called my attorney. Emma here, Sarah. Do you recall the situation we anticipated with the Chicago property? It's taking place. Yes, just as we had anticipated. Could you begin the procedure? Sarah and I went over the paperwork for the next hour, starting everything. Notification would be sent to the property management firm. The corporate supervision procedures would be triggered, and formal notices would be prepared. How about your parents? Sarah inquired. When they understand what's going on, they won't be pleased. They won't find out until it's too late, I said. Furthermore, when they distributed my spare key without my consent, they forfeited all right to an opinion. I received an email from Jessica that made my computer ping. This one includes pictures of the furnishings she intended to purchase for her new home using our parents' credit card. Definitely. For what length of time do you wish to wait before starting the procedure? Sarah inquired. I reflected on all the occasions I had seen Jessica use the kindness of our parents. They had always expected me to be understanding, accommodating, and giving in. Since family supports family, let's wait half a year. I gave them enough time to believe they got away with it. Enough time for Jessica to truly get settled. It will be long enough for everyone to forget who owns it. Then, even if you are family, we remind them of the same reason they shouldn't steal what isn't theirs. For the following several weeks, I watched from a distance as Jessica posted updates about her new life on social media. She was there, sharing pictures of the antique chandelier she had put in the dining room without anyone's consent. Every picture, post, and change to my property was meticulously kept and recorded, as were the Instagram posts about her new beginning and how the cosmos may offer everything at times. Every time they phoned, my parents would dance around the topic of the home, complimenting Jessica on her initiative and her efforts to spruce it up. Rent, utilities, and the fact that they had effectively handed away my property without my permission were never brought up by them. Jessica's condition has significantly improved. On one conversation, my mother cried uncontrollably. Thanks to you, honey, she's truly discovering who she is. What a wonderful sister you are. While I was uploading more unapproved renovation images to my paperwork file, I produced indeterminate noises. The evidence was piling up in the folder. My mother reluctantly added, I was wondering if you might consider putting the utilities in her name just to help her establish some credit after the divorce. This was evidence that would become crucial in precisely 5 months and 3 weeks. Additionally, it's possible that she was considering buying a dog. Pets are welcome in the building, correct? I took a moment to giggle quietly while muting my phone. Well, I have to go, Mom. Large gathering. Later, we may discuss this. My property management business confirmed in an email that evening that they had recorded every modification made to the property since Jessica's unlawful occupation started. Every change and infraction of the corporate property agreements is painstakingly documented and dated. Jessica sent me another text, and my phone buzzed. "Hello, sister. Just a quick query. Can I advertise one of the available rooms to earn a little more money while I'm looking for a job?" I checked my calendar and added the wording to my documentation file. There are 5 months and 2 weeks left. The property was no longer the only factor in this. This has to do with respect, setting limits, and letting my family know that I wasn't their personal safety net just because I was successful. Allowing family members to suffer the repercussions of their conduct is sometimes the most kind thing you can do for them. And there would be repercussions, in fact, in 5 months and 2 weeks. I received my property management company's final report 5 months into Jessica's new beginning. Over $23,000 in unauthorized renovations, several building code violations from her amateur modifications, and most importantly, proof of the illicit air operation she had been doing out of my spare rooms were all outlined in the record. I sat in my office going over the documents and pictures. My meticulously restored investment house was entirely transformed by Jessica into what she referred to as her bohemian fantasy room. The tasteful gray walls were now dotted with bright hues. The expensive appliances I had installed had been swapped out with less expensive ones. Her social media accounts indicated that she had sold the originals online. Additionally, the well-preserved hardwood floors were now covered in what she described as creative epoxy patterns. Emma sent me another text message and my phone buzzed. "The house now looks so beautiful that you won't believe it. I'm considering launching a blog about house remodeling. This may become my new profession." I checked the calendar and added the message to my documentation file. The corporate audit I had planned is in 2 weeks. It took my family 2 weeks to discover the consequences of mistaking compassion for weakness. "Regarding this timing, are you certain?" During our last review meeting, Sarah inquired. "The day after the audit is your sister's birthday celebration. Novices leave." Recalling the invitation I had gotten, I grinned. Jessica was organizing a big birthday party at my place that doubled as a housewarming. Naturally, with our parents' help, she had already engaged caterers and invited 50 people. "The timing is ideal," I said. "Let them rejoice. It will increase the effect of the notifications." My mother contacted Emma the day before the audit. "You're attending Jessica's party tomorrow, honey? She has worked so hard on the house. Everyone is eager to see her makeover of the place." "Actually, tomorrow I'm in Chicago on business, Mom. I will visit." "Oh, so lovely. Jessica will be overjoyed. She is often stating that she wishes you were more present to observe how she turned your former investment property into a genuine residence." My former investment property, like I'd left it behind. And by claiming it, Jessica was helping me out. "By the way, your father and I have been considering it because Jessica has done so much to make it better," my mother continued. "Perhaps we ought to talk about giving her the deed. In New York, you're doing great, and this would help her make a name for herself." I tightened my hold on my phone. "Mom, we can talk about everything tomorrow." I packed many copies of the corporate audit results, legal notifications, and records of all unlawful changes and violations in my briefcase, and caught a flight to Chicago that evening. I also produced evidence of Jessica's internet revenue from renting out rooms in a house she didn't own, as well as police records from neighbors who had complained about her airman visitors. I got at the property early for the formal corporate inspection on the morning of Jessica's party. In addition to my lawyer and the property management team, a qualified contractor had already arrived to inspect the unauthorized alterations, just the infractions of the construction code. Whistling, the contractor went over the modifications. In the kitchen, the electrical work is not up to code. The epoxy floors lacked adequate sealing. And let's not even talk about the weight-bearing wall she took down to make room. After recording everything, I looked at my watch. The celebration is 3 hours away. My phone rang with a message from Jessica just as I was expecting it to. "You're where?" "I need assistance putting up the details now that the caterers have arrived." "Watch what I accomplished with your former home office. Now, it's a meditation space with a water feature." My lawyer put the note to our file when I emailed it to him. She affirmed that the notices are prepared. Do you want us to serve them at the celebration or after? My mother's casual offer to transfer the deed about Jessica's allowed changes to my home got my attention. About 6 months of seeing them take advantage of my success while, I decided, let them rejoice first. Allow them to fully display all of the work they have done on my property. We will then reveal to them the true owner of this mansion, and it's no longer just me. At 4, the visitors began to arrive. As a happy homeowner, Jessica greeted everyone, and I observed from my car. As she offered tours, I could see my parents grinning through the windows, likely boasting about all the changes she had made. At exactly 5:30, as the celebration was in full flow, the formal notices were sent by my property management staff. I fixed my jacket, got out of my car, and headed toward the house I had purchased. After years of diligence and meticulous preparation, it's time to tell my family that sometimes the lessons you believed would be free end up costing the most. Emma! When I went in, Jessica shrieked and rushed to give me a hug. At last you're here! The home is wonderful, isn't it? With it, I've accomplished a lot. My parents' faces lit up behind her. The group of folks who were following me with clipboards and papers in hand had gone unnoticed. Yes, I answered coolly. Let's discuss the specifics of what you did to my property. When my lawyer came forward with notices in hand, the room became silent. When Jessica finally registered the official-looking paperwork that were put on her cycled coffee table, her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Getting even isn't always the greatest form of retaliation. It's about refusing to back down and allowing people to pay for their deeds. And I knew this was only the beginning as I saw my family's faces light up with knowledge. The celebration was enveloped in a deafening hush. As Jessica lifted the top document from the stack, her immaculately manicured palms shook. What? What is this? Her gaze swept across the formal letterhead as she stuttered. Sarah, my attorney, came forward. The legal owner of this property, Naim Holdings, EJC Holdings, LLC, has formally issued a notice of unlawful occupation and property infractions. My dad stepped in and cut me off. What's going on, Emma? Even when the partygoers began talking to one another, I remained calm. My company is called FM Holdings. Dad. About 6 months ago, when you handed Jessica my emergency key, the property was moved there. My mom's face became white. However, it's only a technical pity, though, isn't it? You still own this house. No, Mother. This property belongs to the company and is governed by business policies, regulations that, throughout the previous 6 months, have been broken on several occasions. Jessica's boyfriend attempted to interrupt, claiming to be a real estate mogul whom she had met at a yoga retreat. Come on, it's family business. With all this business jargon, you can't be serious. Sarah took out another piece of paper. We're being serious, really. Unauthorized structural alterations, many building code infractions, and most importantly, illegal subletting through air have all been recorded. The audience became more subdued. The champagne glass that Jessica was holding broke on the epoxy-covered floor. She had been quite proud. She insisted that those were only temporary visitors. Overnight guests are friends. Friends who used your air listing to pay $200 each night. I pulled up screenshots on my phone and requested in a low voice. The one in which you claim ownership of this corporate property. My dad took a step forward, his cheeks flushed. Listen up, Emma. Your sister need assistance. What exactly were we? Dad, merely giving away items that weren't yours. Just permitting unapproved improvements that have jeopardized the structural soundness of the structure. Simply averting your gaze. Jessica operated an illicit rental company at this time. The contractor who had previously inspected the premises came forward. Do you want me to go over the specific code infractions we discovered? MAAM? Jessica started crying. This is unfair. I improved this location. Take a look at how lovely everything has become. I examined her upgrades, including the low-bearing wall that had been removed, the shoddy epoxy flooring, and the amateur electrical work. Better. You have caused infractions and damage worth thousands of dollars, which must be fixed. Thousands, my mom muttered. Sarah gave a nod. Before we deal with the unlawful rental revenue, The baseline estimate for getting the property back to code is about $45. Oh, oh, oh. My dad's face became purple instead of red. This is absurd. You cannot treat your own sister in this manner. I can, in fact, and I'm not doing anything about it. These are only the results of what she did, actions that you made possible. The property manager came forward carrying further documents. Every unlawful rental transaction, infraction, and unauthorized modification is documented. Additionally, we have proof that the original appliances and fixtures were offered for sale online. Anger replaced the tears in Jessica's eyes. I swapped out those unsightly appliances for nicer ones. Those unsightly equipment were worth more than $15,000 sand, were of commercial quality. Appliances, I quietly responded. You were not authorized to sell. My mom took hold of my arm. Please, Emma. This is something that our family can resolve. All this legal bullshit is unnecessary. I took her hand away gently. Mom, that's where you're mistaken. As soon as you and your father agreed to give up stuff that wasn't yours, this ceased to be a family issue. Jessica's decision to handle my investment as if it were her own remodeling project. After the divorce, Jessica lamented, but I needed a fresh start. You are not entitled to my property because of your new beginning. I interrupted her. You don't have the right to operate an unlawful rental company, sell items that aren't yours, or make unauthorized adjustments after your divorce. Half-empty drinks and dishes of unfinished food were left behind as the partygoers quietly filed out. The majority of Jessica's alleged pals had vanished, as had her boyfriend. Sarah cleared her throat. Our records show that Miss Jessica Harrison has illegally rented out company property for brief periods of time, earning about $22,000. It will be necessary to repay this revenue as well as the money received from the sale of company assets. Jessica flopped down on her retro-style couch. That's not the type of money I have. I used it to make this site better. Getting better, I chuckled quietly. You intend to undo all of the changes you made without authorization. Every building code infraction and structural change made without permits. Everything is recorded. And everything needs to be fixed. My dad made one final attempt. Emma, be sensible. What are your expectations for your sister? What is her intended destination? I steadily looked into his eyes. Dad, that's not my problem, as if giving it away wasn't your property. Jessica has precisely 30 days to leave the property and start paying back the damages and unlawful rental income. 30 days. My mom let out a gasp. However, everything she owns is here. Here, she has established a life. She made a living off of stolen goods. Sarah spoke up. It's a politeness to provide 30 days. We might demand an immediate evacuation given the severity of the offenses. Jessica sprang to her feet. This is not possible. Mom! Dad! She can't do this, tell her. I finally realized my parents had no power here as I watched them exchange helpless looks. Their apathetic treatment of my property rights. They are entitled to believe that Jessica's needs came before mine. Everything around them was falling apart. The property will be put back to how it was before. I went on peacefully. Jessica, you will be liable for any expenses that are not paid for by the return of the legitimate rental income. Indeed, if required, we will take legal action. Legal action. You would sue your own sister, my mother said. Do you mean the way you attempted to coerce me into giving her the deed? I inquired. Yes, Mother. Earlier, I heard your idea. Think about this as my answer. Final copies of the novices were distributed by the property management. Our legal department should now be the source of any correspondence pertaining to this issue. Legal action will be taken right away for any efforts to continue renting the property without permission or make additional modifications. I started to walk away, then stopped. Oh, and Jessica, happy birthday. Think of this as a wake-up call. Lessons we never wanted to learn can sometimes be the greatest gifts. I heard my father's irate mumbling, my mother's entreaties, and Jessica's weeping as I left the house, my home. But I felt calm for the first time in months. Being the villain and someone else's tale is sometimes the price you pay for standing your ground. However, I would much rather be the villain than the doormat. They attempted to get me to allow them to call me unkind, allow them to portray me as the cold-hearted corporate sister who refused to assist family. I was aware of the reality. Allowing family members to suffer the repercussions of their conduct is sometimes the most kind thing you can do for them. I stood in my beautifully renovated Chicago property 6 months after Jessica's tragic birthday party, taking stock of the changes. The exquisite gray of the walls had returned. New commercial-grade appliances shone in the kitchen, and the load-bearing wall had been correctly restored. Every code violation had been fixed, every repair had been recorded, and every evidence of Jessica's advancements had been removed. The rehabilitation ended up costing $67,000, which was a lot more than the original estimate. Jessica had consented to a payback plan using her share of our grandparents' legacy to cover the damages and unlawful rental revenue once contractors, after many talks through our lawyers, discovered the entire extent of the damage. She texted me, the first direct message we've exchanged in months, and my phone rang. "Can we have a face-to-face conversation?" Just sisters, no attorneys, no drama. Something had changed in me during the last 2 months, but I still thought about ignoring it. Coffee at 10 tomorrow, the business across from my house. The following morning, I nearly didn't recognize my sister when I got to the coffee shop. The easygoing attitude and bohemian attire have vanished. Rather, Jessica sat in business casual, appearing professional with a laptop open in front of her. As I sat down, she whispered softly, "Thanks for meeting me. I've been thinking a lot lately." Oh. I noted the spreadsheets on her screen while maintaining a neutral tone. "You were correct," she told me, which surprised me in every way. I exploited it. "You were successful, so I assumed that. I had a claim to your property as you were my sister. What you constructed was not respected by me." I took a drink of my coffee, awaiting. "These past few months have been instructive," she added. "Relocating to live with parents, having to budget and dealing with actual repercussions." She chuckled quietly. "I'm not as defenseless as everyone believed, it turns out." She swiveled her laptop in my direction. A business plan for a reputable home staging firm was displayed on the screen. "Do you recall my previous discussions regarding interior design? This time, though, I'm doing it correctly, completing classes, earning a certification, and creating a solid business plan. No giveaways, no shortcuts. What about the money?" With real curiosity, I inquired. "I'm starting off small and developing a portfolio using my existing talents. I'll apply for a legitimate business loan when I've established my worth." "Stop depending on family funds," or she paused, "stealing anything that isn't mine. I saw my sister for the first time in years." I actually saw her. The person she might be when she really tried, not the conceited lady who had occupied my land. She said, "Mom and Dad aren't happy. In an attempt to shame you into giving in, they wanted me to oppose the repayment arrangement, but I refused. We all needed this wake-up call, even myself." She took a check out. "I wanted to give you one in person to show you that I mean it, even though I know this is the first installment that is formally going through the attorneys." I glanced at my sister and then at the check. "Don't lose it." "Finally," I said. "Instead, apply it to your certification classes." The repayment plan remains the same, but her eyes widened. "But this one payment?" I explained. "Think of it as a future investment. This time, a real one." Her eyes filled with tears. But these weren't the manipulative tears I was used to. "I'm really sorry, Emma, for everything. I am aware." We sat in comfortable silence for a bit before she spoke again. "To help with the repairs, Dad sold his boat. He said that because he handed away your key, this is the least he can do. Additionally, Mom is discussing her enabling habits with a therapist." I arched an eyebrow. This was not what was expecting. Jessica said, "Your actions didn't just wake me up. They forced us all to examine our tendencies and exploitative behaviors." How we used familial relationships as justification. As she prepared to depart for her certification class, she grabbed her belongings. "I'm not pleading for pardon just yet. I want you to know that you made the correct decision, even though I know I have to earn it. Even if at the time it seemed harsh. What did you do? None of us are brave enough to do it. The cycle was broken by you." I walked back to my property after she departed. Everything that had been repaired was highlighted by the afternoon sun that came through the windows. Perhaps, though, I was aware that more than just the property had been corrected. My father sent me an email that evening. Apologies and amends was the subject line. Emma, please. It started. Along with some other things, I'm selling my yacht. I need to put this right. Not because Jessica asked me to. I abused your confidence by giving away your key, and then I had the gall to claim that I was defending it. Your father need to treat you better. I noted how unusual it seemed from his typical defensive reactions and preserved the email. It seems that making people face the repercussions of their conduct may bring about change. My property manager emailed the final renovation images the following day. I came to a startling realization as I looked at them. It had been more than just safeguarding my investment. It had included setting limits, requesting deference, and making the difficult decision to put justice ahead of short-term harmony. Once more, the property was genuinely mine. More significantly, though, my family was beginning to value not only my property, but also my autonomy. The chance to mature is perhaps the greatest gift you can give your family. Sometimes the strongest foundations are not built on unending generosity, but rather on solid boundaries and earned respect, even if that opportunity is surrounded by legal notifications and difficult lessons. I grinned as I stood on my renovated property. The walls were strengthened rather than merely mended. I was, too. Story 3. My kid passed away in an accident that day. I trembled and phoned my mother. Mom. My son. An accident occurred. She answered icily. Oh, that. Your sister's birthday is today. With a giggle, my sister grabbed the phone. Don't destroy the atmosphere, please. I hung up without saying anything. However, they would come to regret it hours later. Sarah's hands worked quickly in the kitchen at 6 in the morning. The smell of the frying pan was wonderful. She was preparing pancakes this morning. David's favorite outside the window is her son. Just before Memorial Day, there was a cool wind. The white lace drapes fluttered gently. It has a pleasant scent. Pancakes today appear rounder than normal. When she heard David's voice coming down the stairs, Sarah turned. He was immediately recognized as the star player for North Hills High School's varsity basketball squad due to his outstanding height for a sophomore in high school. David untied his uniform tie and sat down on the kitchen counter. His father had died in an accident 16 years prior, and the gesture was exactly the same. While making coffee from Folgers, Sarah looked at the profile of her kid. Lately, he seemed to have abruptly matured. Isn't it the semifinals today? Directly in opposition to Riverside High. I genuinely want to win, but it will be difficult. Scouts are also coming, I've heard. David stopped when he noticed the gaudy pink invitation affixed to the refrigerator. The glitzy writing, which was likely purchased from Party City, was adorned with sparkly decorations for Lisa's 40th birthday celebration at Olive Garden. There was a minor clouding of his countenance. Will you attend your aunt's party? I hope you can attend my basketball game. The final words could hardly be heard. Well, I have to take care of Jimmy, Sarah said, her voice trailing off. In recent years, she had become more distant from her sister Lisa. While her Instagram was flooded with daily updates about her glamorous life, Lisa, a well-known beautician with hundreds of thousands of social media followers, did nothing to try to understand her sister's struggles as a single mother. In essence, Sarah and David looked after her 8-year-old son, Jimmy. Then I'll take him. I also purchased his favorite Eggo waffles. David finished his pancakes all at once and sprang to his feet. They did it every day. Every morning, he had offered to drive Jimmy to school while Lisa worked at the beauty parlor. He occasionally even offered homework assistance. David, thank you. Don't go overboard, though. Everything is all right. Anyway, Jimmy is on my way. In addition, David's grin seemed a little hesitant. A younger brother is what I've always desired. Seeing her son's withdrawal, Sarah's heart warmed. Her husband's accident had left her with a youngster who had undoubtedly inherited his father's generosity. Her mother Margaret's name appeared on her phone when it rang. Sarah took a time to think before responding. Sarah, will you assist with today's party planning? We must retrieve the decorations from Party City and Lisa's specially ordered cake from Macy's. Sarah let out a long sigh at her mother's controlling tone. I apologize, but I have job, Mom. After all, shouldn't family come before work? Lisa's birthday is today. You must consider your sister. Even in this particular situation, Sarah sadly knew that Margaret's idea of family didn't include her and David. Her mother's attitude has progressively altered after she lost her spouse. Her preference for Lisa, the youngest, was now clearly visible. In the afternoon, Sarah was in the Ross Township real estate office organizing papers. David sent her a message saying he was going to buy Aunt's gift with Jimmy. In around 2 hours, we'll return to Macy's to browse for fragrances. That message had been answered by Lisa. Just be sure to be to the party on time. It will ruin the atmosphere. Every one of my fans is waiting. At 5 p.m., David had Jimmy's little hand and a Macy's paper bag in his hands. He was still wearing his basketball gear and had hurried to go shopping. Will Mom enjoy it, in your opinion? Of course. Your mother loves this brand the most. On Instagram, she shared a post about it. Do you recall? David gave a nice grin. It was a tight victory at the end of the basketball game. The coach had looked proud, and the scout had responded favorably. Together with his nephew, he had now picked a gift. The only things left to do were take a shower and go to the party. Yes, exactly. Would you like to visit the ice cream shop, Jimmy? Jimmy's eyes brightened, but then there was a strange noise. The sound of a roaring engine and music exploding from speakers. Instinctively, David turned to face the sound. A crimson sports automobile swerved out of control at great speed and crashed into the parking lot. It would later be discovered to be a tragedy brought on by the risky driving games played by young people. Jimmy came to a halt and gazed that way. Around them, people yelled and dispersed. The voice of Jimmy David came forth. Through the air, the paper bag soared, the sound of glass shattering. For a moment, the air was filled with the pleasant aroma of pricey perfume. The next instant, Jimmy was shoved aside by David's bulk, protecting him. The little corpse tumbled into the lawn. Police sirens are screamed. David forced a little smile in the midst of the confusion before passing out. After confirming Jimmy's safety, once more Sarah's phone called, but it was from an unidentified number. She felt uneasy even though she was at work. The cops in Pittsburgh are here. At those words, the blood drained from her face. She dropped a pen from her desk. An accident has occurred at Ross Park Mall. An ambulance has arrived to remove David Williams. He is presently on his way to the hospital's emergency room at UPMC. The next words seemed vague, as though they were coming from a great distance. Her mind was assaulted by only one statement, critical state. Sarah quickly informed her supervisor of the problem, and then her automobile rushed through Ross Township's calm residential streets at an unusually high pace. It seemed like a lifetime, even the little moments spent waiting for the traffic lights to turn green. Along the way, she went by police vehicles. In the background, ambulance sirens sounded. David? David! At the hospital, she murmured his name like a prayer while her hands shook on the steering wheel. She was led to the operation room entrance by a young resident physician. His white coat sleeve had bloodstains on it. Your kid is undergoing emergency surgery right now, Miss S. Williams. He is in critical condition. We hoped you would arrive as soon as possible. David, my son. He will be okay, won't he? No response was found. The physician regretfully dropped his gaze. Cold as blood, the red bulb over the operation chamber blazed. Sarah took up her phone and sat in the rough waiting room chair. She dialed her mother's phone, her fingers shaking. She called many times and missed. Mom, there's been an accident, my kid. On the other end of the phone, how brave were you to say those words? Pop music was blaring loudly. The sound of glasses clinking. Laughter. Today is Lisa's birthday. The champagne was going to be opened. The celebration is starting to pick some steam. There was no trace of worry in Margaret's voice. She seems irritated by the interruption, if anything. Don't ruin the atmosphere, please. We are broadcasting live on social media. In the background, Lisa's voice had seized the phone. A cry of happy birthday was heard. Cheers came next, a champagne cork popping. Happy words. The photographer's voice said, "Okay, pose," followed by laughter. Sarah hung up quietly. There was a profound quiet. Time passed ruthlessly, only noted by the ticking of the clock. It was now pitch dark outside. The corridor was filled with a strange white glow from the fluorescent lights. She was checked on by nurses many times. Are you in need of anything? Sarah, however, was too exhausted to reply. All she could think of was the pancakes she had prepared that morning. Who knew that breakfast would be their final meal together? The door opened, and the operation room light went out. Everything was revealed by the surgeon's face as he took off his mask. Other medical personnel looked down. "I'm so sorry. We exerted every effort." The doctor's voice seemed far away, like they were coming through water. There had been serious injuries, multiple cardiac arrests, severe internal damage, and significant blood loss occurred during surgery on a white-sheeted bed. Even though David's hand was still warm, it would never regain its grasp. The tranquility of his long eyelashes suggested that he was simply dozing off. Sarah's heart was shattered by the realization that he had passed away by himself, without anybody nearby. Her legs buckled and she leaned against the white wall in the hospital corridor. Deep, murky darkness enveloped her awareness. Her phone's screen showed an unopened message as her final sight. The innocent smiles on Lisa's party photographs glared back at her. Hundreds of people have already liked the post. The voices of the nurses dwindled. Just before she passed out, Sarah questioned whether this was a nightmare or the real world. Sunlight poured into the hospital corridor in the morning. Even after regaining consciousness, she had stayed in the same chair. A young policeman walked stealthily up to her. Most likely, mostly tasked with desk job. The collar of his uniform appeared a little worn. Sarah's face eventually lifted. "If you can, tell me about the accident." Beneath her eyes were deep shadows. "The security camera footage has been examined by us," the officer went on, picking his words carefully. The entire event was recorded by Ross Park Mall's security cameras. The drift challenge, a risky driving technique that has become popular on social media, looks to have been attempted by the red sports vehicle. The cop pulled out a tablet and saw the video. The recording was blurry, but it captured everything well. As they walked, David held Jimmy's hand as he held the shopping bag. The abrupt, unpredictable driving, and the instant David shoved Jimmy away without hesitation. "We have also collected statements from witnesses." The cop pulled out his notebook. One of the housewives there said the high school kid was definitely a hero. He sacrificed himself to keep that young child safe. His voice trailed off. At that time, the cop appeared unable to control his emotions. The sound of hurried footsteps filled the hall. A young nurse, Miss S. Williams, ran over. "Jimmy is now aware again." Sarah got to her feet. Her legs faltered. The cop stood at her side. The ICU hallway seemed oddly lengthy. Her nostrils were irritated by the disinfectant odor. There was the sound of cardiac monitors beeping as usual. "Aunt." Sarah's eyes began to well up with tears at Jimmy's little voice. The little corpse was in bed with 4 bandages in his left arm and 1 around his forehead. He was undoubtedly alive, though. David kept me safe." Jimmy's tone faltered. Sarah grasped Jimmy's hand in silence. The temperature was warm, alive. This was undoubtedly the life David had sacrificed for. A middle-aged female physician with weary eyes was addressed by the attending physician. "Thankfully, Jimmy's injuries are not serious. In a few days, he ought to be able to leave the hospital." David's fast thinking. With a pitying face, she interrupted herself. A social media alert sounded on Sarah's smartphone. She glanced at the screen out of habit. 5 p.m. was the post time, yesterday. David's accident happened at that very time. In the backdrop, Margaret and Lisa were seen holding champagne glasses and grinning. "Greetings on your 40th birthday," a dessert with decorations. The ambiance of a fine dining establishment. Congratulatory remarks flooded the comments section. The social media world and the actual world. Sarah's chest constricted at the harsh contrast. In a low voice, the nurse told her, "Lisa and your mother have phoned many times." Sarah gave a headshake. She wasn't yet prepared to see them. The cops returned David's phone. The last message he had typed was still visible on the lock screen. "I'll return in time for Aunt Lisa's celebration, Mom." I hope the scent we chose would appeal to her. That unadulterated consideration ignited a resolve within Sarah. It wasn't over yet. It was only the start. Ross Park Mall Tragic Hero was the headline of the morning newspaper that the nurse tenderly handed over. A picture of David wearing his basketball outfit from North Hills High School was placed next to it. With his arms wrapped around his comrade's shoulders, he was grinning widely. Jimmy's release was scheduled for 3 days later. The hospital room's white walls were softly lit by sunlight coming through the window. Jimmy was spooning hospital Jell-O while seated on the bed. The four had been removed from his arm, and the bandage had been taken from his forehead. Jimmy's demeanor changed to one of seriousness as he gazed up at Sarah. "May I discuss that day?" Sarah took a deep breath. She was aware that this time would arrive. Jimmy had been reluctant to discuss the disaster. Given the psychological stress, the physicians had advised against pushing him. Indeed. Naturally, Jimmy took the smartphone from his lap and opened it. Photos from Lisa's birthday celebration were on show. A shiver went down her spine at this moment. 5 p.m. is the post time. Since David won his game, we were discussing getting ice cream. Jimmy's voice trembled. Then David shoved me, and there was a tremendous boom. His speech faltered. His little hands were shaking. Abruptly, the sound of rushed footsteps came from the corridor. Lisa stormed into the medical facility. No cosmetics, untidy hair. Her typical flawless beautician appearance was gone. "I apologize." "I'm so sorry." Clinging to Jimmy behind her, Lisa went to her knees. Margaret came in gently. Her typically commanding presence was vanished, and she appeared little and reclusive. Sarah Margaret's words seemed to be squeezed out. "What have we got? What did we do?" "It happened at that moment. Have you not yet removed the post?" Sarah sounded as icy as ice. "What?" "The pictures from the celebration. There was the post right when my kid was dying." The room's air froze. Lisa and I stammered over what she said. "Were you overly preoccupied with living the ideal life for your followers on social media? Was the news that my kid was struggling for his life more significant than the sound of champagne popping?" Sarah's voice increased slowly. "David had you in mind right up until the very end. He even purchased a gift." She reached into her purse and pulled out the shattered bottle of perfume. A little smell persisted. "But all of you." Lisa got to her feet. "No, I'm also in pain." She practically screamed. "I have to be the ideal beautician and mother. I can't let my supporters down. Always. Constantly concerned about the opinions of others." Tears poured forth. "I couldn't even look after Jimmy well enough." I didn't want to acknowledge it, though. I did not want to appear weak. "Okay?" Consequently, Margaret touched her daughter's shoulder. "I'm accountable for it." The voice of her mother was softer than ever. "I overindulged Lisa. David and Sarah were neglected by me. My daughter had lost her spouse, and I was unable to provide for her. This mom owns everything." Margaret attempted to apologize by bowing down, but Sarah intervened. "That's sufficient." A soft voice. "I am unable to pardon everything." However, she gazed at the pristine blue sky beyond the window. It was the same sky David had last seen. "But for the sake of Jimmy, we must continue to be together. That is, David would have preferred that." Jimmy's voice was tiny. At the conclusion, David stated, "Please, get along. We're family." Slowly, the mood of the room started to shift. Lisa pulled out her phone and started to tap the screen. She inhaled deeply and said, "I'm deleting the post. I intend to shut down the salon. I want to schedule time to give Jimmy the support he deserves." Margaret gave a quiet nod. "I also need to change." Sarah was standing near the window, looking out into space. From her heart, she addressed David, "My son, rest assured, I'll safeguard those you cared about." A breeze signaling the start of a new season was blowing outside. Ross Township Cemetery the day before Memorial Day. It had been a year. Sarah held a bouquet in front of the tombstone. It was the same season when David had taken his final breath, and the crisp green trees created soft dappled shadows while a pleasant wind brushed her face. She turned to see Jimmy sprinting in her direction. He was taller now. Since then, he appeared to have gained a full size. His outfit was from North Hills Middle School. Affiliated Middle School is David's former school. "Jimmy, avoid running!" From behind him, Lisa cried out. Her gaudy old clothing were gone. She was dressed simply. The color of her hair has been restored to a modest shade. "I'm sorry, Mother." Jimmy really apologized. It was evident that the mother-son bond had been steadily evolving. "Sarah, good morning." At last, Margaret approached softly. In her hands was a bouquet. She never skipped her weekly trips to David's cemetery, they added. They were all three in front of David's tombstone. The stone's surface was inscribed with kind remarks. "David Williams is a hero, cousin. and adored son. We shall always be guided by your affection. David, can you guess what took place today? Jimmy got started with excitement. The basketball team tryouts went well for me. Like David, I'm going to put in a lot of effort to become the team's ace. Lisa touched the shoulder of her kid. She now worked at a nearby after-school program after closing her beauty parlor. Her relationships with actual people have strengthened, despite the sharp decline in her social media following. Margaret added with a hint of pride, "That's not all. Jimmy, the instructor, took first place for his report on future dreams." Jimmy gave a hesitant smile. "I said in my writing that I aspire to be a paramedic. Like David, I aspire to be able to assist others in need." Sarah gave a quiet smile. Yes, things were starting to shift. The basketball team from North Hills High School won their game a week after the disaster. Each squad member wore a patch bearing the number 23 from David's jersey. The local newspaper featured the picture on its first page. To celebrate David's academic accomplishment and his last act of bravery, the university scouts took action. They created the David Williams Memorial Scholarship in order to help youngsters who are going through challenging times in the future. "Come on, let's snap a photo," Lisa recommended. Also, no longer a picture for social networking. Margaret delicately lifted one of David's framed photos. In his basketball suit, he had a bright grin. "All right, let's say cheese." Jimmy gestured toward the sky as the shutter snapped. The tombstone was softly illuminated as the sunset broke through the clouds. David seemed to want to be included in the picture as well. Margaret raised her voice as they were heading out. "Every Wednesday now, I volunteer at the nursing home. I believe that I could support those who are experiencing loneliness," Lisa went on. "With the after-school children, I have also initiated a Heroes Initiative. It's an effort to assist those in our community who are in need. My goal is to continue David's legacy." Unlike previously, there was no makeup to wipe away as the tears trickled down her cheeks. Sarah muttered, "There are still a lot of things I can't forgive. However, since it is what David would have desired, we must proceed." Together, the three of them spoke, Sarah thought as she strolled into the cemetery at dusk. This world was undoubtedly a little kinder because of her kid. That sensation would persist. "I'm excited for tomorrow's BBQ, Mom." Jimmy's voice pierced the stillness with brightness. This year's Memorial Day custom for them. It would remain intact among the three families. The gravestone, illuminated by the fading light, was slowly but surely becoming a new kind of family. Under the same softly tinted sky that David had gazed up at on his last day, a lone flower petal fluttered in the breeze.